Hi, this is For the Better, a podcast for healthcare marketing professionals navigating change and innovation. It's produced by Reason One, a digital agency dedicated to building a brighter digital future for the healthcare industry. I'm your host, Ben Cash.
Hello and welcome to For the Better. I am Lauren Miners, Director of Marketing and Partnerships at Reason One, and I am really excited about our guest today. He kind of needs no introduction, but just in case you're one of the few people in the world who's not heard of Colin, we're joined today with Colin Hung, Editor-in-Chief of Sway Marketing Community and the CMO of editor of Health IT Today. And general man about town when it comes to healthcare marketing and technology. And Colin, I have to tell you, right before we got on this call, I was looking at your LinkedIn to make sure I got all of the things, and it just kept going. You do so much that I had no idea about. You're on boards, you're on advisory committees, like you really are probably one of the, if not the most connected person in the realm of healthcare marketing and IT. So this is just really a treat to have you today.
Well, it's a treat to be on with you, Lauren. It's always a pleasure to have the chance to speak with you. And thank you for the invitation to your podcast. I think what it really says about me, though, is that I'm a workaholic, but also that I really love what I do. So it doesn't feel like work when you're able to talk about healthcare marketing and healthcare in general to, people that are curious about it and who want to do who want to improve it. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and totally second that. And I love just like the intersection where you sit, and we'll get into that in a second. But I just want to flag, I was thinking about this too today, that like this feels weird because usually you're interviewing me and I am, at a conference in an exhibit hall, and I'm trying desperately to say something that's maybe not smart, but at least usable. So this is a total role reversal. I'm stoked. And
Yeah,
I hope I do a good job interviewing you as you do
uh,
as for me.
I'm sure you will, Lauren. And it is fun, right? And it's fun for me because then I'm not like manning a camera and pushing microphones in
Right.
people's faces at the same time.
That's right. We'll try that next time. Well, you, in your many, many roles, you do a lot of, I mean, you're in media, so it's your job to be kind of a news junkie about healthcare and marketing and IT and the whole ecosystem, right? But in this role, it takes you all over the country and sometimes the world to learn about trends and, and what's happening, what's next. And so that's really what I want to get into today as we're preparing to move into 2026. So my first question, I'm curious, what are some of the big trends and takeaways you saw kind of in the whole community over healthcare marketing and digital in 2025?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There were some pretty big macro trends. I mean, the biggest one and most obvious one is the frozen budgets. I mean, that was talk of the town almost everywhere I went. And so for those that were fortunate enough to go to conferences, they almost felt guilty being there because they were just like, look, all our budgets are frozen. We've had to some cases, they had to let some people go, or they've had to get rid
Mhm.
of their agency, and had to bring everything, and do everything in house because they just couldn't afford it this year. So yeah, marketing budgets, both on the provider side and the health IT vendor side, have taken a pounding in 2025. So the talk of the town, the biggest trend was, how do we do more with the limited resources we had? Or how do we
Yeah.
do at least as much as last year with the limited resources we have? And so there was a lot of focus on just being more efficient and being smarter of where they're spending. So there was a lot of discussion around analytics and metrics for the purpose of just trying to uncover where is the best bang for your buck.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I feel like since 2020, we have heard this like murmur of doing more with less. We're doing more with, but this year it did. I'll say it too. Like we felt it at conferences. There were less people. There were folks that were just really honest about not being able to come to things, and my nature is to put a positive spin on most things. I'm hoping that, that mindset shift that we were forced into is going to make us more creative marketers. Um, I don't want to see all of this last because I don't think that it's going to be a positive thing for the industry. We all need education. We need to grow. We need to grow our networks. Those things that, um, that have sustained us for so long. But I'm hoping that there is at least something that we can take away from having less to work with.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, it sounds cruel to say it this way, but I think that we're going to be smarter having gone through this, because I do
Mhm.
think that there was a bit of a waste of budget in some cases where you spent on things because you've already always spent on those things. You've always used that channel because that channel was at one point very effective for you, but you haven't really looked at it lately. And so I think by, you're having your budgets a little squeezed, it's forced people to look in the nooks and crannies and discover places where, hey, like maybe we shouldn't be doing this, or maybe there's a better way to be doing it. And we just haven't investigated because there were other priorities, rightfully so. And so I think coming out of this, we are going to be, as an industry, more efficient and effective, having gone through and looked in the mirror and said, do we really need to be doing these things? Now, thankfully,
Yeah.
two of the things, other trends is one I'll mention from the provider side. Um, One of the areas where spending did not seem to decrease as much as other areas was actually on patient acquisition and digital front door, because there was a recognition that generates revenue, and that helps your community, and that improves access to care. And these are all things that are still very important. So organizations were still willing to spend money and invest time and effort in these areas. There were still lots of people working on new websites and improving patient experiences, and making sure that when people came to the site or came to the app, they could find and book an appointment very easily, or that they could pay very easily on the other side.
Yeah.
And so that was nice to see that, there's recognition from both marketing leadership, but in general provider leadership, that this is still a good thing to do, despite the decreases in budget. So that one area of marketing was definitely still relevant, still hot in 2025.
Yeah, I think that's good to hear because that is, making those little tweaks and changes. I mean, even if it's just changing, looking at a patient journey and going, all right, it's 8 steps. Can we get it down to 5? And it's a micro project. It's not a huge budget. It's not a giant ask, and you can show ROI really quickly so that you can take that same model and expand it across, multiple service lines and that sort of thing. So
Right.
good to hear that that's still happening. We're seeing that with our clients, but across the board, I'm glad to hear that.
Well, and the other one for the vendor side, and I include agencies on this side.
Yeah.
Um, the other trend was back to in-person events. Now, I'm not saying the large ones like, yes, HMPS, HCIC, SHUSHMED, they were all still good and fairly well attended given the economy. Um, but it was the smaller events and local events and community events, networks of peers just going out to dinner. It was funny to hear that these things were still happening because, again, there was a recognition that unless you're selling a commodity, you have to have a relationship with the person who's going to buy something from you. And despite our best efforts, building a relationship online takes a long time, right? Like trying to build a
Yes.
relationship with someone on LinkedIn takes a long time and a lot of effort. It's actually faster if you can do it in person. And so finding opportunities to connect with people in person was still an investment that companies were making. So they were still going to the events. And even though there may not have been as many providers or healthcare buyers there, I think a lot of people are still saying, you know what, it's still worth it being here. For the few customers that I did see, it was worth it. So
Yeah.
I think I think in person is still going to be a thing.
I I 100% agree with you, and I hope that that trend does continue. I feel like I've had this same sort of conversation a few times just in the last like 5 or 6 months even, that people are craving that connection. And, yeah, if you're going to events, you it's about being a part of the community and being part of the dialogue, and sometimes that's the only time you have an opportunity to see your clients in person. So even if it's not about, like, getting new leads or whatever, it's the opportunity to have a shared experience, which you can't put a price on that, I think. Yeah, totally. So I'm from the South, and when we go to church on Sunday, what's equally as important as who's there is who's not there. So I want to ask you what trends or topics or buzzwords or whatever were missing this year that did not get carried forward.
Wow, that's a tougher question. Um, you know, I wish I could say AI wasn't carried over, but it was literally everywhere. But it's starting to be a little bit more subdued. So I will say that it wasn't missing. Obviously, AI is still very hot, but it was not in your face as much as it was in 2024, which I think is a good thing. Um, the one topic that wasn't as front and center as it was last year was everything around HIPAA compliance. So remember
Mm,
when the guidance came out in
mhm.
2022, there was like it was like Armageddon. Like you
Yeah,
had to like go scorched earth and get rid of all your analytics. Um, it's still a hot topic in 23, still in 24, but this year in 25, I didn't see it as much. I think people are still concerned about it, but I think now people have found enough workarounds. They're getting first party data. They found or they can live with whatever option they have chosen to go with. So it wasn't as prominent in 2025 as it was in the prior year. And I think that's a good thing in the sense that I think people are now just living with it, right? They've found a way to
yeah.
live with it.
Yeah, I think, that's interesting that you bring that up too, because I feel like when that all was happening, when it was like everyone was losing their minds over compliance, there there were, like, maybe 1 or 2 solutions on the market. Like, you could do server-side tagging if you have somebody, in your organization that can manage that, or you could buy one of 2 or 3 platforms. And now there's, like, a half dozen. It has become its own market, and it's very interesting to watch how each of these platforms is kind of tackling this problem, and that, like, it has to do with the size of the system, you know, the the team size and their um talents and everything, it's become its own little, like, sub-market almost. Kinda cool.
It has, and again, that's a good thing. But I also think the urgency to do something. I mean, you've had 2 years basically to do something, and I think most people have. And so it's no longer top of mind. And so I didn't see as much of that kind of advertising, nor presence at conferences, nor conversations around the whole HIPAA compliance thing. I think most people have found a way to deal with it, even though they might be looking at some of these platforms, right, to get more
Yeah.
data, get data back. Um, the the other thing that was completely missing from 2025 and most of the conferences, especially towards the end of the year, was really a lot of stuff around reputation management, which is really odd to say, but it really has, for me, it was really big in 24. There was a lot, I saw that a lot, and how to manage your reputation online, and certainly there are still companies dedicated to it. I'm not saying they're not
Yeah.
there, but in terms of the priority for providers, that didn't seem to be there by the end of 2025. They had moved on to other things. So that was a big change for me from the beginning of the year to the end.
That would track because where I sit with some of the regional conferences that I work on, we've seen 24, we had a lot of reputation management companies want to speak. This year, they came out in droves to sponsor, and it's getting a little contentious, probably because of exactly what you just mentioned. It's like, everyone's kind of got, okay, I got my solution. I'm good now, and so it's not feast anymore. I don't want to say it's famine, but like that's maturing. So I kind of wonder what the next wave is going to be, if it's because we're staring down this the WCAG 2.1 AA
Yep.
deadline in May, and I'm seeing a lot of hospitals and systems put accessibility overlays on their websites, which is actually less accessible. They should not be doing that. But I'm just bracing myself to see a whole lot of accessibility folks start showing up at 2026 conferences and wanting to speak and wanting to sponsor things. That's the bet I'm making.
That is how it goes. That is how it
Yeah.
goes. Just to make a note quickly on the health IT side, on the vendor side, one of the
Yeah.
things that started to go away was actually booths. A lot of people with the exception of RSNA, which is still, you see mega sized booths at that particular conference for radiology. For most of the other conferences, whether it was Vive or HIMSS or Health, we started to see, we don't see very big booths anymore. I think Epic probably has the largest, Oracle maybe, but even those ones are much smaller than they used to be. And so I think we're seeing a recognition of, hey, you don't need, you want a big presence, but you don't need a big booth to have a big presence. And so they still have the army of people there,
Hmm.
but I think people are really shrunken their footprints. So that's something very noticeable in terms of a big drop off. And some companies have decided not even to have a booth, and then just to show up and just be an
Yeah.
attendee. So I see that happening. I saw that happening a lot more in 25.
So that goes to what you were saying earlier about the shrinking budgets. So, all right, we don't need the 20-foot, with the tower and the like, all that stuff. We don't need that. But what we do need is a place to meet clients. We do need our sales team to be in person. So that's interesting that that's happening in the health IT space too, because I mean, come on, I work for a medium small agency. I look at those booths and I just assume that there is just an unlimited, river of cash that can pay for that kind of stuff. And I know that that's not true, but I see it. And you mentioning that they're shrinking their footprints as well is, I guess, a little bit validating for someone, organization of my size, that we're doing the right thing in prioritizing human connection over essentially a multiple $1,000 billboard.
Yeah, it's almost like we're entering the age. I feel we're entering an age again of austerity in terms of booths. This before meaningful use, which is going back way early. This is what happened. Like there was a downsizing of booths. It was much more modest booths because there was a lot of feeling of, well, if I'm giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars for this solution, is this where my money is going? Like you're building
Yeah.
a really fancy booth, holding these really fancy parties. Is that where this is going? And so I think companies picked up on that trend and downplayed it. They started getting smaller booths, much more reasonable. It was still big, but not flashy. Instead of having steak for everybody, they would do a little buffet thing at a local bar. Like it matched the times, right?
Yeah.
And then meaningful use hit, and like you need to be big and bold because you need to attract people. And then we had like the waterfalls in the booths, and we had like literally there was waterfalls in booths. We had like all
Oh
these
my
other things
God.
that were happening because you needed to get bold and big. But I think now the cycle is, the wheel has turned. We're back to that cycle of, like you don't want to be seen as flashing dollars around unnecessarily. So it's
Yeah.
okay to have a booth, but maybe it's more meeting space, right? And less about the fancy LED wall. And there's more people that you've got there, but they're more of your implementation people mixed in with your salespeople, because that's where your customers might be coming for support questions and those kinds of things. And maybe you're teaming up with people to have a party rather than your own big bash. So those are things that I think people are doing because it's reflecting what customers are demanding. And you don't want to be seen as the one who's just throwing dollars around right now, because that's not going to sit well, I think, with a lot
Yeah.
of potential buyers.
Yeah, yeah, and there's also just such a great benefit to, you mentioned, going in with other companies to create experiences, because, not only does the bill get smaller for everyone, but you have this other benefit of, hey, these are also my friends. They're going to bring their clients. We're going to bring ours. Everyone's going to get along. Just it's one big great neighborhood, one big great community. So, yeah, yes to smaller budgets, but also like there are things that you can't price. That sort of brand positioning. All right, I've got a couple more questions for you. So, for the one person who hears this who doesn't know who you are, you also lead and put on Swaay.Health Live every year with your amazing team. And we're really looking forward to it in Foxborough this year. And remind me the dates, I have them written down.
It's the end of April, beginning of May. So April
End of it.
20, yeah, end of April 30th to May 2nd, I think is what it is.
Amazing. Okay. So we will be going to that, and that's always one that I mention when I'm talking with my platform partners or others who ask, well, where do you go to? And I always say, well, that's one of the first ones I mentioned. Like, you need to go there because it is this magical Venn diagram of health systems, agencies, and the tech space that you just don't get anywhere else, I don't think. So after that shameless plug for Swaay.Health Live, I'm sure you're still looking for sponsors, right? um, what are some other like hidden gems that you came across this year, or like up and coming events that are worth anyone in any of those communities checking out?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for that shameless plug for Swaay.Health Live, and I think that is a hidden gem for. It's so hard to explain. Like, I think I ran into this with you, Lauren, the first time when I was talking to you about it. It is so hard to explain what it is, and then when you get there, you kind of understand why it's so hard to
Yeah.
explain what it is, right? Because it is one of these few places where competitors are literally sharing information with each other. It's literally the place where an agency can look and see what a health IT company is doing. Go, oh, hey, that's a great idea. Maybe I can bring it back to myself. A provider can look at what a vendor is doing. Go, oh, okay, maybe I can apply some of the lessons learned from that experience to what I'm doing over here. It is such an amazing learning community and a community of networking, and it really is special. And we're very thankful for that because the people are what make it special. So if you're looking for an experience where you get to really get to know the people who go to the conference, I would say then Swaay.Health's one of the hidden gems. Um, and we have really awesome speakers too. So yeah, so yes, thank you for that. In terms of other hidden gems, I mean there are a few. I mean I'm always surprised and pleased to go to some of the smaller conferences. I think that's where most of the surprises are for me. Um, I've been going to Neshco now for like 3 years. I find that as
That's a
like a
big one.
hidden gem, mostly because it is very regional, very local. But the people who go there are so passionate and lots of return visitors. And there does seem to be this trust relationship where if you are an agency or a vendor that has gone to Neshco for a number of years, the people who are at the provider side and go to that conference are now like trusting of you, right? Because you've been there a few years. So there does seem to be that same dynamic that we have at Swaay, where people want to do business with people who are supportive of Neshco. And so I think that's a hidden gem. If you ever get a chance to go, I love the people and I love the environment, and the sessions are always great. So, and it's always in these like unique smaller venues, which again, don't get a chance to go to the New England area that much, right? So to get to go to some of these smaller places is a lot of fun. Like we were done like a steampunk styled hotel this year at Neshco. It was very cool. I would never have and we got to get a chance to go to the Basketball Hall of Fame, which I never would have gone
That
to,
was so cool. Yeah.
right?
And they do such a great job of and now this is a shameless plug for Neshco. Uh, and my friends at Chiprams and Mashmet are gonna get mad, but they're all great. They're all great. But one thing that Neshco does every year that we're trying to, I think, incorporate into some of these other organizations that I'm involved in is having some kind of site visit to a
Mm,
hospital and hearing what they're doing on the ground and how they're really impacting their community through different kinds of very targeted programs and stuff. And it's a great way to like set the tone for the week and remind you what you're doing. Like, why am I here? I'm not
Yes.
here because I want to go to Burlington, Vermont, which is, I think it's where it is this year. I mean, I do, but I'm here because I'm supporting a community that is having a direct impact on the health of a region. And it's a little bit of a like, oh yeah, that's that's why we're all in this trench together. And that's why those relationships you mentioned, you get that smaller environment and you are able to make friends and really really support each other in a way that we need.
Yeah, and Chip Rooms was on my list, and unfortunately, I just couldn't make it happen this year with my travel schedule. But that's another one
Understood.
that I think is a hidden gem. And then on the IT side, I mean, there are some hidden gems that are very specific to to certain aspects of the digital side. So I've been plugging the Barrel Institute's conference for a long time. It's the one that really focuses in on patient experience and digital front door. It's not well known. It's not as big as some of the other shows, but it is 100% focused in this area. The people who go to that show are so passionate about improving patient experience, provider experience, caregiver experience. So if you're at all in the digital front door or you have anything to do with patient interaction, that's definitely a hidden gem show to go to. It's not that big, but there's like 3,000 people that go to it, so it's fair
Oh, that's
sized.
nice, nice. Yeah.
And yeah, it's all health systems and large clinics and so forth. And it's been running for decades. But it's a really great community. They do some really cool things at their show, which I love. So that's a hidden gem on the digital side. And then if you if you really want to go and get an idea of trend setting for like just in terms of like booth event presence and so forth,
Oh yeah.
there's three shows that I would recommend you go to, and they're all big, right? And so it's hard to say that they're hidden gems, but if you've never gone to them, I would definitely encourage you to go at least to one. So one I would say is Health, HLTH. That show has got high production value. If you want to see how a large show can really build a brand experience, definitely I would recommend that one. I would go to HIMSS just because everyone's there, and
Yeah.
it's in
Yeah.
terms of understanding how powerful a networking event can be. You got to see the networking events at HIMSS because that's where all the action is. Uh, and then lastly, I would say you have to go to RSNA because
Okay.
RSNA, the radiology show, which happens every year in Chicago, it is the only show where medical equipment is showcased like cars are at an auto show. Like literally, like you've never seen a CT scanner or an MRI machine this shiny, this new, under exactly the right
Wow.
lighting, and where the staging and the way the show is put together, it is incredible. And so if you're looking at trends for next year and the following year in terms of booth design, booth attractions, you will get everything you need to get out of just walking the show floor at RSNA because they have all the latest gadgets that attract people into the booth. And I will guarantee whatever GE and Siemens and those companies do, we're going to start to see those over at HIMSS Health and all of those shows within a year.
That's so interesting. That's sort of like, go watch the Paris Fashion Week
Right.
because the colors are going to be used in, the sweater you're buying, to use a reference to the Devil Wears Prada for those who get that. So that's fascinating. I might have to try that because I mean I'm not going to put an MRI machine in my 10 by 10 at H&PS, but just the creativity of those teams that are like spending juice. I don't even want to think about how much money on those booths, but yeah, I'll see if I can attend one of those this year because that might be just a fun thing to go walk around and look at stuff for
Yeah,
sure.
and if you, I mean, most of those shows, if you're just going in for one day at just the exhibit hall, for example, they usually have very discounted tickets to allow you to do that. So,
To just kind of walk around. Cool. All right. Well, I'm in budgeting mode right now, so I'll throw a line item on there and see how it goes. One more question for you. before we close out. This has been awesome. And you mentioned that you do a lot of traveling, and I'm not going to ask all the obvious questions with regards to that, but I am curious because I go to probably 7 or 8 of these a year. So, probably a fraction of what you're doing, but still traveling a good bit. Do you have any like tried and true hacks that just like make your life easier or more comfortable when you're just continually on the road? Do you have any like what's your secret?
Wow, that's a good one. I should probably do a video on this at some point, but yeah, just
You
for the
should.
for those that don't know or don't follow on LinkedIn. And by the way, if you do follow me on LinkedIn, I apologize for all the posts that I do, but I go to about 40. This year I went to 42 conferences
Oh my
in
gosh.
total. Now, about a dozen of them were in Toronto, which is where I live. So, um, I didn't have to travel for those other than take the highway. But, that means I was on the road for about 30 shows this year to other places. There are a few hacks. I mean, um, obviously everything I own, I buy for weight reasons. So everything like
Yeah.
in terms of electronics, in terms of anything like that, I always go for the lightest and smallest, not necessarily the most powerful. So my laptop is not very powerful, but it's the smallest one I could get because that I can still use because I don't need a big screen while I'm, on the road. I
There
need
you
something very
go.
light to carry. I have multi-purpose things where it's a charger and an adapter, right? Like it's a battery and it's adapter all in one, so I don't have to carry both. I carry a lot of those wires that have multiple ends on them, so I don't have to carry like 4 or 5 of those things. So it's some of those things. That's a hack. There's some other hacks just very quickly. Obviously, you choose clothing that you can reuse and mix and match, so you don't have to pair. You don't have to like wear like bring 7 versions of a pair of pants, right?
Yeah.
You can just
Yeah.
black, that kind of thing. And also non wrinkle resistant materials, right? Like Mariana wool and all that kind of stuff. It really makes a huge difference. But some of the more practical hacks. I highly recommend Echo shoes or Hoka's if you are okay walking around in running shoes. But Echo ECCO, I don't own any stock and no conflicts there, but they make shoes that are some of the most comfortable to walk in all day and yet
Oh.
are professional. Like so they're professional shoes, but they're extremely comfortable to walk around in all day. And I've gone through a lot of shoes, and that's the one brand that I know I can wear all day at a conference and not get blisters or anything. So that's definitely one of my comfort things. And
Yeah.
they're good enough to pair with jeans, but also with dress pants, right? So it works out really well. And then I will say this trick, and I hope no airline is listening to this, but there is a trick that I've taught a lot of people with your water bottle. So if you have a water bottle that most people have, those metal ones, the
Yeah.
swell bottles, all those things. So there's a trick where if you wedge that bottle in that little holder in front of your seat and push it up against the bottom of the tray, the person in front of you cannot lower their seat because it prevents it for the seat in front of you from being lowered back. And I've done this a couple of times where it just where the seat was so
Oh,
close and I just needed to work. And when you have that seat lowered in front of you, you can't work. Like it's just impossible. So I've done this trick where I've jammed my water bottle up behind it, and then when they try to lower it, it doesn't move, and they just assume the seat's broken. So they, they stop
that is
after.
brilliant.
So I mean, I don't do it all the time, but just when you really need to work and you just don't want that thing right in front of your face, that's a hack that I've used once in a while.
Oh, that's great. I have never heard that before, and I will 100% be trying that on my next trip because, yeah, sitting in coach, and that talk about like things that are shrinking. It's space in airlines. So you just bought somebody like a few very, very precious inches on their next trip.
Again,
I
like
love that.
I should probably do a video on this because you get even more. Like I'm not kidding you. I have 4 backpacks here that I use depending when I
I
travel.
believe it.
And the reason why I have 4 backpacks, one because of the different equipment that I have to carry, but two, I know what airline I'm flying. I know which bag fits and doesn't fit underneath the seat. So depending on the airline I fly, I know I can get away with a larger one, or I have to go with the smaller one in order to fit the thing underneath the seat in front of me. So, which makes a big difference. Obviously, when you're traveling so much, you want to make sure you get the carry-ons, and you don't want to get yours like taken out and put under the plane, and so you have to be aware of how high the seats are, the openings underneath
Oh
in
my
front of you.
gosh. You do need to do a whole show. You could do a whole like video series on just this. Like, this is the bag that fits in on an American flight. Here's how I pack it with all of this stuff. Like, I would watch that. 5-10 minutes, I would watch that. Yes. Do that in your free time when you're not editing other videos.
There you go. I'll do that in my free time whenever I get some.
Right. When you get some. Well, speaking of time, we are right at time, and I just have so appreciated this time with you and our conversation. I'm really looking forward to 2026 and seeing how some of these things pan out, and then I'm looking forward to seeing you on the road again this spring. We'll be back at it. So
Yeah.
thank you again so much, and yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, and thank you, Lauren, for this opportunity. It's been great. It's always great talking with you. It's talking with people. That's part of the reason why going to conferences is so fun, right? Is to connect with people and get the chance to have these fun conversations. So appreciate what you do. Appreciate the podcast and everything that Reason One is doing. So, and yeah, look forward to seeing you on the road next year.
Yeah. And if you're not our listeners, if you're not already registered for or sponsoring Sway, go do it right now. It's worth every penny and it's a great time, and we'll both be there. So, I mean, that's reason enough. So thank you, Colin. Appreciate you, and see you in the spring.